Hello everybody and welcome back. In today's video I want to show you why you should always make sure that your heated print bed wires are in perfect order and what can happen if they're not. As you can see on my lotmaxx printer that I've had some work done on this cable, and the reason for that is the original cable that was in here now looks like this, and it is not only bent but it is broken. It is broken to the point that it is now almost entirely apart. Maybe there's one strand of wire. No, there's nothing. These are absolutely broken. And this didn't come overnight. This printer has, I would expect, between 3,000 and 4,000 hours of printing on it. Most of it from big projects that I was doing on it, and the rest of it came with the pandemic, where it's just been printing face shields basically 24 hours a day. And I started noticing that stuff went wrong. I would have adhesion problems at the beginning, and in the end the printer started randomly failing. And when it did that, I was kind of well, taken aback, because I didn't know what was happening. And only in the end, when the printer completely failed, I realized what an idiot I've been for not checking on this, because this has actually failed on other printers that I've had, but most of the time the X-axis wiring failed on those because the temperature probes that are also in here, they don't have stranded wires but solid wires, and they tend to break too. But with this printer, this happened in the table, and this thing has a 24 volts heated print bed with 240 watts, so it draws 10 amps of current. And what started happening with either this break or this break, it started arcing. And when it started arcing, it basically broke the power supply that was in here, because the power supply is not designed for such high differences in the current that is demanded, and the arcing just puts a load on it that will actually really wear it out. And this led to this printer completely failing. The power supply, which is a 24 volt power supply, failed. It was then outputting between 20 and 45 to 50 volts randomly, and it basically fried all the other electronics in here. Luckily for me, I did find a way to fix it, because when it failed and it was completely broken, I got the hunch that something was wrong, because I'd heard some noises that I couldn't explain. And when I found the broken power supply, I was under the impression that I would have a short in here somewhere, but I didn't. But I dug into it. I found the power cable to the printed bed, and when I saw that, I was kind of sure that there must have been more damage in there. So I took everything apart. I separated the power supply. I tried powering it with a separate with an external power supply, and that didn't work either. So what then ensued was a very long period of just troubleshooting and finding stuff. And in the end, I found out that if I powered the low voltage section of the printer main board, it would actually start. I then figured out that it probably was the voltage regulator that was on there, but that was an even bigger problem because I couldn't get that one chip that was on there delivered here really quickly, and I didn't want to go into an order because what if it had just failed? Luckily, I found one of these small 5-volt regulators, buck regulators, that you can buy on Amazon and everywhere, and it had the same chip on it, and it also had a better version of the required diode for this on it, so I was able to swap these out. After I'd done that and I redid the cable and I had everything soldered up, it still wouldn't boot or it wouldn't run correctly. After that, started an even longer period of searching for it, and I actually found out that the power input pin on the PCB of the controller had actually developed a fault around its solder joint, and that usually happens if you have a bad solder joint and you have very large currents going over that, or you have very large changes occurring on that, and that just wears them out. So after I resoldered those connections, it would start reliably. Now, the only thing that is still broken is the original power supply, but lotmaxx made it so easy to switch these because they're actually accessible right from the back. Open these 4 screws, you can take out the power supply and fit a new one. And I don't know if it was just a lucky chance, but I do have a broken Creality printer which has the exact same 24-volt power supply, and I was able to switch the 2 of them. Now, fixing the power supply is probably either not going to happen or it's going to take a long time because I have to get certain parts that I suspect are broken, and it might just be easier to get a new power supply, but I want to go into that anyways, so I'm going to try and repair it in the future. Now, with the new power supply and everything in it, with the new cable, I was able to slightly change the cable routing, so the cable now doesn't flex as much right where it comes out of the cable protector and at the end of the printer, because those were the 2 points where you had the most movement. It still has a lot of movement in those areas, but I suppose it's going to be better. I also used a cable that was a lot better than the one that was in here, because this is just a very simple power cable. It is not meant for being flexed all the time. You can actually see that this is just standard power cable. You can use high flex speaker cable like I did. There's highly flexible silicone cable that have more strands, thinner strands in them. You can go for better material, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. The problem is that this cable, in 99% of all times, flexes right here and right up here. And the bend at the end stays nicely and round. If you have a printer with a cable chain, then you're much less likely to get that problem. But as I said at the beginning, I've already had similar things happen to the thermistor cables, even when the printer had a cable chain. So that is not a guarantee that you won't get these issues. I'm probably going to put a piece of PCB or other material below here, so this will just not flex as much. Yeah, so right now my printer is back in working order. It is still a slightly old printer, so you can actually see that there's a lot of wear on the V-rollers and on the wheels, and I've had to readjust the rollers a number of times already, but it's still in working order. It's just that the X and Y axis are pretty well worn. And yeah, I really like this printer because the heated print bed works okay. It is a very sticky surface. You can have big prints and they're not going to come off at the edges. If you get blistering, you know what to do. Just turn it around, heat it up until the blisters disappear, flip it back over, heat it up again, and you're good to go again. So this is just my recommendation. Always make sure to check your heated print bed cables, because if they fail, they can take down the entire printer, especially if you have a 24-volt printer with a very powerful heated print bed. Always make sure to check that you have no bulges on the cable. Like this one has two. There's actually a little piece of copper coming off of here. This is well worn, and once a printer starts getting old, these are the first things that are going to happen to that printer. Yeah, keep these things safe, look after them, and once you've modified them or you had to fix them, make sure that you go for a cable management where you have very little bend on your cables, and where you don't have any sharp bends that go forward, backward all the time, like it went on this. Because once this was broken, this would just wear itself out in no time. So that is my big recommendation. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, and thank you very much for watching.